Hi, this is Donovan. I'm replying to the week 3 discussion posts. So first I wanted to respond to what Dora had to say. And I wanted to respond to 3 things that came up and I'm not trying to single anybody out. Actually, these were themes that came up in several people's responses. And so I wanted to address them. All right. So the performative versus I guess non-performative, behind the scenes activism. I wanted to share that that they're both important, and that that it's really not an either or. So the folks that are very public in the work that they do for a cause, I wanted to share about this idea called observational conditioning, where one of the ways that we learn is from watching what other people do. And so, just like in an earlier class where we saw Dr. Joyce DeGroy talk about being in a grocery store and her cousin standing, who was taken as if she had white privilege, stood up and to a cashier that was being racist toward Dr. DeGroy and her daughter. And then a bunch of other white people who had witnessed the incident spoke up as well. So we talked about that before, and that being a model for ways that any of us can speak up when we have a little bit of privilege in any kind of way, can be the first to speak up in a situation, and that very often we're going to find that other people will be moved by that in some kind of way. So we've never really talked, I don't think, about the science behind that, but so there's this thing that when we see people do a behavior, our mirror neurons in our brain light up, and there's that, without even really realizing it, we learn so much from what we see other people do. We learn what is socially acceptable and not acceptable from what other people do. And I've been thinking about that a lot in 2020, because I do believe that some of the really selfish behavior and greedy, dehumanizing behavior that people in leadership in the U.S. are modeling right now, certain individuals, observational conditioning is helping me understand why that seems to be contagious amongst, not everyone, but there's a lot of people who seem to be inspired to dehumanize others or be indifferent towards the suffering of others when they see someone else doing it in such a public way. That can work for us as well. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that in LGBTQ leadership or any kind of nonprofit work or compassionate service, if you're being the person that's bringing visibility to paying attention and taking seriously the experience of a stigmatized, marginalized, or excluded group. So yeah, even though some of those folks may be celebrities, I just wanted to bring attention to, even though some of the work is performative, when it's at that level of getting engagement from people who will support the organization, support the movement, support the work. Performative work is something that's going to help people normalize behaving well, behaving in those anti-racist ways. So the examples that came up in the discussion, I get that it can be a little grating to see someone seem like they're not taking the work very seriously. They want the ally, I think I brought this up before, they want the ally cookie. That's what a lot of us in the LGBTQ community call it, when somebody wants the pat on the head for being a good ally, but they don't seem that invested in changing or doing any real kind of work or ongoing support. It's a beginning step. We can kind of wince at it or giggle about it or whatever, but it, on the other hand, they're also making visible that being a decent human being, being intersectional, being anti-racist, being inclusive of people regardless of gender and sex, not just regardless of, but being inclusive of people of all genders and sexual orientations that that's just normal. That's what decent people do, is just everybody's welcome. Everybody's part of the human family. So I won't belabor that, but so hopefully the behind the scenes folks, a lot of us like to be behind the scenes. So I think anything we can do to understand that we have different roles in development and sustainability of LGBTQ nonprofits, that while some of those roles are very visible and some of those roles are less visible, as long as we're showing appreciation to each other for all of the work that gets done, then whether public knows about all of it is maybe not as big of a deal. I would just hesitate to do anything that undercuts. We don't want to undercut the folks that are working in the public eye, because that brings, they have a lot of trolls. I was that person for a minute. There's the trolls, there's the doxing, there's death threats that come, there's threats to your children that come with that. So being visible on issues that are divisive and controversial is harder than it looks. And it's important. It's just different. So I just wanted to put that out there as you're thinking about all that and people that you could potentially collaborate with. And I know at least one of you was sharing an idea about getting prominent people involved to boost a specific LGBTQ organization and their work. So, there's different ways of looking at that. Another thing that came up was being the bearer of bad time, being the man, being, as Lewis put it. So one of you asked about, that must be really hard when you're in that role, and what do you do? And so I know Lewis talked about it a little bit. I just wanted to share an idea again of collaboration in LGBTQ orgs, in the bias for us type of model, that can be particularly effective when you want to stay on task with the mission and stay supported by the community that you're trying to serve. So that model would be that, let's say I'm the bearer of bad tidings. I'm the person that's in a leadership role right now. If I can remember for myself and carry myself as if I truly am centered in this truth, and then also remind the people that I'm working with at the organization of this, that I'm just in this role for a minute, in a sense. I've been designated, that the community or this organization has put me in this role for a time. I don't own this role. This isn't about me personally. I'm just doing this task because this is the task I was assigned to do. So maybe right now it's executive director, or maybe it's whatever it is, but it's not mine. It's a service function that I'm performing for this organization right now. So in that role, I have some unfortunate, challenging news I got to share. I got to tell you about some limitations we're facing, or what I've experienced when I'm out there trying to get some support for us so that we can pay our salaries, or, whatever it was. Lewis had some different examples. So whatever it is, you're facing some kind of a challenge. If you can share it really sincerely, that this is a challenge that we face together. I'm telling you about it, and I'm just part of the organization to listen to how we're going to deal with it. And in the role that I'm tasked with right now, I'll do whatever we decide I'm going to do in this role to address it. But you know what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. But to approach these things in collaborative ways works best, and just to remember that if you are in a leadership role, part of your task is going to be to bring challenges and to talk about those, and to be the bearer of bad tidings sometimes, but to be explicit about, this isn't just my personal opinion, and this isn't just me forcing this on you. I'm sharing with you what I've learned in the role that I'm in right now. And if it's time for me to, and remember that this role, like this is negotiable for me to even be in this role, right? So if this isn't working out, we can make some adjustments. So there's that. And then the question of what do you do when things are changing, and something doesn't seem sustainable. And I was thinking of, at least one of us was brought to tears. I was in tears several times during looking at some of this coursework myself. It really cuts to the heart when you're wanting to serve the mission of an organization and serve people that don't have a lot of resources, that desperately need resources and help, and you're not, yeah, like several of you poignantly expressed, like you're trying to dismantle a system and you're having to possibly go to this system for help to serve the people that need the system dismantled. It's very confusing, disorienting, and can feel unethical. And so what do you do when you're in the crux of that dilemma? And one of you brought up, do you change the mission of the organization? Then do you change that it's a for us by us organization, just so that you can become financially sustainable? That's I just wanted to share with you because that came up in several of the discussions and assignments and so forth. That's really the heart. I know I typed it too, but I wanted to say it to you face to face. Is that that's really the heart of this struggle, right? It doesn't have an easy answer. It's why we're really inviting each of you to think about, where are your values, what do you feel okay with, and where are your lines drawn? And not only is it important to do that individually before, well, maybe some of you are already in this work, but especially if you can have that in place before you go onto a board or onto a staff of a nonprofit org, you're going to be miles ahead of folks that have not wanted to think about this. Most people who are drawn to nonprofits are there to be of service and loving the mission of the organization and want to have nothing to do with the finances. It's the only problem comes that when everybody involved in a nonprofit wants nothing to do with the finances, all of a sudden you don't have sustainable org, right? You can't pay the phone bills. You can't be of service if you don't have any means at all of being of service in some functional ways. So you have to think about this a little bit. And then it starts opening up all these ethical dilemmas. So if you're willing to do the hard and sad work in some ways, of opening up these issues and looking at them, it gives you a chance to think about where you stand before you get there, and you can help your organizations and other people think about these things in very gentle ways, and be compassionate with them, that it is hard. And nobody likes this part of nonprofit work. I don't know anybody that likes this part of nonprofit work. It's not the fun part. It's the paying the bills and writing out the checks part, of like when you're running a household with somebody that you love. It's like, that's not the fun part. At the same time, I did want to reassure you that, like, I know that you're all struggling with this, and that's because it is a struggle. I guess I already said that, but I mean, this is the hard part. So of course it's hard to take this class and see these dilemmas and realize there aren't easy answers. But if you realize there aren't easy answers, you're getting it. So I hope your takeaway is going to be that this is, there's always going to be a dynamic relationship with how do we pay the bills? And it's something that everybody in the well, depending on how you run the organization, but if you do that collaborative model, if you're for us, by us, if you want to continue to have the support of the people you serve, you need to be really transparent about what your values are and how they line up with what you're doing. Because especially in the queer community, you're always going to get questions about it. And we've already looked at corporate sponsorship of pride events. That turns a lot of people in the community away from pride events. There's a lot of people that just won't go because it seems like a big commercial, and it's not to them what the original commemorations of the Stonewall riots doesn't seem to have a lot to do with, like, Coca-Cola or selling vodka or something, maybe it does. I don't know, but well, I kind of do. But anyways, so it's okay to have a lot of feelings about this stuff, and it's I guess I just wanted to say that day to day, not only on an individual basis, which one of you brought up, not only will you be wrestling with that on an individual basis, but of course, as a community, we keep rethinking it, and it's movable. It's movable. How we're responding to the larger picture at any given time, and the dynamics in our organization at any given time, and the feelings and values of people on the board and the people in the community. But if you're a grassroots org, we do, it's okay to not be profitable. I think that I know it came up in one of the responses is, well, what if we can never be profitable? And there's some sadness about that. It's okay to not be profitable as long as you can still meet the goals of your organization. And so do remember, like, mutual aid models. If you don't know what that is, I don't know if we're going to get a chance to go into it. So please, look it up. But right now, in the pandemic of long time in communities of color, in queer communities, mutual aid's been a thing for a really long time. So that's just surviving in this capitalist system while we're trying to dismantle it, perhaps, or reform it. I know not everybody's on the same page, but even for those trying to dismantle it, in the meantime, we're also trying to survive without buying into it. So there's ways that organizations do that it means you're living a very simple life. It means that the bottom line is always moving. It means that we're willing and aware as a community and as an organization, and organizations, those grassroots collectives I've been a part of, we're very keenly aware that quarter to quarter we're not guaranteed of where we're going to stand, or that we're going to be able to make payroll, or hours may need to be cut, or we duck that good, we're going to make payroll this, and we don't have to cut hours. It's always in flux. It's always a concern. It's always paycheck to paycheck kind of living. So I guess I just wanted to share in some that it's okay if the way you're looking at this is, wow, this work might never be something that I know definitely it's going to be financially sustainable all the time. Like, I may never have a solid sense that everything's secure in my nonprofit organization. True. Yeah, I mean, it's not a reason to lose hope. It's not a reason to give up. It's not a reason not to go. Because think about what your alternatives are. So if you can still meet the mission of your organization, and if your community still supports each other, and if you have a group of people that you're like, that we are all in agreement. I've been LGBTQ community orgs that I've been part of. I'm speaking about that. This is what the experience is like. It's like, okay, we're in this together. We'll share what we have. We'll do what we can, and we'd rather do it the right way than have a nest egg or a cushion or a safety net financially that means we'd have to sell out and do it a different way that really doesn't reflect everybody in our community. So I'm thinking of some specific organizations where we really had to walk that tightrope about respectability politics. And I was the guy with the PhD that went out and went to the American Psychological Association annual meeting and spoke at that, and I could do that because I had those credentials. But we also, I'm maybe disclosing a little too much, but anyways, if there were other people with very different lived experience doing very different things at the organization, and that was important. That was more important than what I was doing. I was being that, I guess, what was talked about earlier as that performative person. I did that performative piece to see if we could, move in a certain type of direction and get some allies and support from one constituency, but we didn't do it at the expense of our main base of folks that respectable. We didn't import respectability politics into the organization, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was more like a side trip with one delegate, which was me, to go visit that, but that wasn't our main messaging or strategy. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I just wanted to respond a little bit to all the things that you shared. And I know I didn't get all of them, but I hope that addressed some of them, and I'll talk to you next week.